The credit crisis deepens. Now Germany appears to guarantee every savings account in the country. As it struggles to save one of its biggest banks, it would be a bold move for Europe's largest economy. Here, pressure on the Bank of England to cut interest rates this week. The Chancellor tries to reassure.
Be in no doubt, we will do whatever it takes to ensure that we stabilise the banking system, because that is critical to supporting businesses, to helping people.
The two young brothers killed in a house fire. Neighbours speak of their mother's desperate attempt to save them.
All this time the girl was just screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. And we just couldn't get in. I just wish we got in, we just couldn't get in.
The fight against the Taliban. The outgoing British commander says there'll be no decisive victory. And Caps victory for the comeback kings, Liverpool.
It's Dirk Kuyt! Wins it for Liverpool!
Good evening. The global credit crisis has deepened, with Germany, the economic powerhouse of Europe, struggling to save one of its biggest banks from collapse. With confidence plummeting, the German government appears to have taken the dramatic step of guaranteeing the contents of all savings accounts. But tonight there's confusion over the plan, with the Treasury here trying to clarify exactly how far Germany is prepared to go. Our business editor Robert Peston has the latest.
Only yesterday, the leaders of Europe's four largest economies promised that they would act in a coordinated fashion to tackle the unprecedented crisis gripping the global banking system. The German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, seemed particularly concerned that unilateral action by member states could hurt the interests of other countries. And then today, she said this.
We will not allow the problems of one financial institution to cause problems for the entire system. And we would like to tell the people that their savings are safe. The federal government is vouching for that.
What she appeared to be saying, and this was backed up by official briefings, was that Europe's largest economy, with more savers than any other, was following the example of Ireland and Greece by giving 100% protection to all retail deposits. But within a couple of hours, confusion reigned. Our Treasury couldn't get sense out of the German government about what precisely they were doing. And this matters, because if Germany is giving a formal 100% guarantee, the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, Alistair Darling, would almost certainly have to do the same. Because if he didn't, there'd be a risk of money leaking from British banks to those in Germany perceived as stronger. This uncertainty couldn't have come at a worse time, because it's been another weekend in which some European banks have been teetering on the brink. In Germany, Ms Merkel and her colleagues are trying to salvage a £30 billion rescue of Upo Credit, a giant property lender. In Iceland, its government is tonight trying to organise a rescue of its entire banking system, having nationalised one of them, Glitnir, only last week. In Belgium and Luxembourg, the authorities are trying to prop up the giant Fortis, and in Italy, UniCredit is seeking vital new capital. So where next in the UK?
We're on the cusp of a major economic disaster coming out of the financial disaster. I've been a very strong advocate of the independence of the Bank of England, supported them throughout the last 10 years, and we're going to need an independent bank, but these are very exceptional circumstances. And I think the Chancellor is going to have to write to the Governor of the Bank of England and say, instead of worrying about whether inflation's 2 or 3%, the issue is the collapse of the financial system and the collapse of confidence.
We will do whatever it takes to ensure that we stabilise the banking system, because that is critical to supporting businesses, to helping people, to helping jobs. It's absolutely critical. And of course I welcome cross-party support.
The Tory leader argues that our banks may need an injection of capital provided by all of us as taxpayers.
The Bank of England is meant to be the lender of the last resort. There's the danger of it becoming the lender of the only resort. And so a recapitalisation to strengthen the banking system may well be necessary.
So what's the big theme emerging from this weekend of summitry and attempted bank rescues? It's uncertainty, which is hated by bankers, so fear will again reign in money markets tomorrow morning.
And Robert's here with me now in the studio. Robert, so lots of activity across Europe. Where do you think this does leave the Treasury here?
Well, it's a bit of a mess and there's a lot of uncertainty. It looks as though the German government is making a commitment of about £400 billion to reassure their depositors, which sounds like a lot of money, but actually that would not provide 100% protection for all retail deposits in Germany. So there's still this confusion about the extent of the commitment that the Germans are making. If it turns out that they are guaranteeing all retail deposits, then I think it is inevitable that we will have to follow suit, because money leaks across borders like a sieve in these globalised markets, and I think there is a risk that money would flow from the UK to Germany if we didn't offer the same kind of protection. Now, I'm afraid there's uncertainty elsewhere at the moment. Perhaps the biggest source of worry to the banking markets at the moment is what's happening in Iceland. There are attempts to prop up an entire banking system. The international markets have lost confidence in pretty much every Icelandic bank. They've got about $120 billion owed in foreign currencies. And therefore what's going on overnight is a rescue at the very highest level of the Icelandic government of, as I say, an entire banking system. We don't know where it's going to end. I assume that by the morning we'll have good news. One bit of good news, however, just in, which is that the giant French bank, BNP Paribas, appears to have stepped in to rescue the operations of Fortis in Belgium and Luxembourg. So at least as of this moment, we've got one piece of what looks like unambiguous good news.
OK, Robert, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Robert Peston, our business editor. Well, the new business secretary, Peter Mandelson, has praised the Prime Minister, insisting that any disputes between them are in the past and adding that they're both part of the Labour family. Mr Mandelson has revealed that he asked Tony Blair's advice about taking the job and was told it was a no-brainer. Our political correspondent Rita Chakrabarti has more.
It's been a gift for headline writers. Peter Mandelson's shock return to government has been the focus of political scrutiny. He's been frank about past hostilities with Gordon Brown, but says that's behind them now.
I am and always have been, a member of the Labour family. And when times get tough, families pull together. And that's what we're doing.
He sought advice from Tony Blair before agreeing to join his old rival's cabinet. But he said that now he and the PM are joined at the hip.
Gordon Brown has changed. He's become Prime Minister. And in my view, it has a very, very steady hand on the tiller. I think he and the Chancellor Alistair Darling have really demonstrated strength and very real qualities during this crisis. And they're going to continue to do so.
The Shadow Chancellor, George Osborne, had a chance meeting with Peter Mandelson at a Greek taverna whilst on holiday. Mr Mandelson rubbished reports that he dripped poison about Gordon Brown into his ear, or that of any senior Conservative. His dining companion was sceptical about the outbreak of harmony in the new cabinet.
It's very surprising to hear him say he's joined at the hip with Gordon Brown. And if the problem with this government is it's divided and dysfunctional, bringing Peter Mandelson in is going to make it more dysfunctional and more divided.
When MPs come back to Westminster tomorrow after their summer break, they'll find much has changed. A new look cabinet and a Prime Minister whose authority many think has been strengthened. But Labour MPs who face defeat at the next election will still be asking themselves, will this be enough to get them out of a political hole? Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News, Westminster.
The two young brothers who died in a house fire in East Sussex have been named today as Taylor and Lewis Jenkins. They were just 5 and 7 years old. Police are still trying to establish the cause of the blaze that killed them. From Eastbourne, here's John Brain.
Taylor and Lewis Jenkins were described as two delightful little boys, but they died in the most appalling of circumstances. Today, forensic teams have been inside the terraced house where the children were trapped by flames. Their distraught mother was outside, powerless to help them. The emergency services were called here yesterday afternoon. They brought Taylor and Lewis out, but they were already unconscious and died by the time they reached hospital.
The flames were just engulfed that whole doorway and whole...
Jason Maynard tried to save them. He can't forgive himself for failing.
She just shouted, my kids are under the stairs. So we just sort of charged over to the doorway, tried to get in, obviously realising that the whole place was alight under the stairway, and that's actually where the kids were supposed to be. So we couldn't get in, so we just ran around the back, tried to get a water butt or anything, any sort of water, to try and put the fire out. Couldn't find nothing, so we came back to try and get in the door again. And all this time the girl was just screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. And we just couldn't get in. I just wish we could have got in, we just couldn't get in.
Neighbours have been bringing flowers in memory of the two boys who should have been enjoying a birthday party today.
Nice family, you know, the boys always happy, you know, just I knew him from school, bit from various barbecues, parties, etc. Just can't really take it in.
The police here say this is one of the worst cases of its kind they've ever had to deal with. Today they asked us to turn our cameras off as they brought the boy's mother to lay her floral tribute. She had to be restrained from trying to go into the house where her children died. Investigators expect to be at the scene for several days, but the early indications are that Taylor and Lewis Jenkins were the victims of a tragic accident. John Brain, BBC News, Eastbourne.
The US presidential election campaign has turned personal. With just 30 days to go before voters head to the polls, the Republicans have been accused of running a smear campaign against Barack Obama. John McCain's running mate Sarah Palin has accused him of having links to a former terrorist who bombed the Pentagon. From Washington, here's James Kumrasamy.
In the final decisive weeks of this presidential campaign, Barack Obama is punching home his message of change and warning that his Republican opponent is hitting below the belt.
Senator McCain and his operatives are gambling that they can distract you with smears rather than talk to you about substance. They'd rather tear our campaign down than lift this country up.
He was speaking about the McCain team's new focus on their opponent's past, unveiled this weekend by the self-proclaimed pit bull with lipstick, Sarah Palin.
One of his earliest supporters is a man who, according to the New York Times, was a domestic terrorist.
She was referring to this man, Bill Ayers, a university professor who was part of a radical 60s group, the Weather Underground. The Obama campaign says the two men have never been close. John McCain's running mate begs to differ.
Our opponent is someone who sees America as imperfect enough to pal around with terrorists who targeted their own country.
This is Meet the Press.
But on the Sunday political talk shows, even some Republican strategists were wondering whether these strong words were the most effective ones.
I think he's on a losing path. I think the McCain campaign has to look in the mirror now and decide, do we need to change up the strategy? They've been running the grinding campaign on Obama. There's a lot of good things to attack Obama about. People have a lot of doubts about Obama. But they've got to fix McCain. McCain has to connect to voters on the economy.
And in its latest advert, the Obama campaign is launching its own economy-focused counterattack, questioning John McCain's temperament during the financial bailout crisis.
Polls suggest the economic crisis has raised far more questions about John McCain's temperament and judgment than about Barack Obama's. It all makes for a fascinating encounter on Tuesday when the two candidates have their second debate in Nashville, Tennessee. James Kumrasamy, BBC News at the White House.
We're not going to win this war. That's the blunt assessment of Britain's outgoing commander in Afghanistan. Brigadier Mark Carlton-Smith says that the aim instead is of reducing the insurgency to a level that can be contained. From Kabul, Martin Patience reports.
The fight has been long and hard, and after 7 years, there's no end in sight. British troops in Helmand province are engaged in daily battles with the Taliban, who seem to have an unlimited supply of fighters and firepower. And the UK's top military commander in Afghanistan has offered a blunt assessment of how things are going. Brigadier Mark Carlton-Smith told the Sunday Times, "We're not going to win this war. It's about reducing it to a manageable level of insurgency managed by the Afghan army." The Taliban are becoming increasingly flexible in their tactics, often to deadly effect. But many officials believe that talking to the movement is essential to ending this conflict. Brigadier Carlton-Smith's comments aren't out of line with the government's current position, but perhaps with the bluntness of a military man, he's done more than anybody else to spell out what Britain can hope to achieve here.
I think many people in the military already think that we need to manage a graceful withdrawal while we still can, and realise that there has never been a military solution in Afghanistan.
The British forces say the fight against the Taliban will go on. Their position hasn't changed and there will be no military retreat. But increasingly there's a sense here that this is a war that needs to be waged on the political front as well as the battlefield. Martin Patience, BBC News, Kabul.
Time now to look at the day's football results. That's with Ollie Foster. Ollie.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Hello there. There's news of a shock in Scotland coming up, but we'll start with the Premier League. All today's goals are on Match of the Day 2 over on BBC 2 right now. So if you don't want to know the results, you know what you have to do. Chelsea are still top of the table after beating Aston Villa 2-0, but Liverpool are still level on points with them after a terrific comeback at Manchester City.
Is this the season Liverpool finally get stuck into the Premier League? For most of the match at Eastland, such thoughts were just pie in the sky.
Oh, yes, he could.
Stephen Ireland and Javier Garrido had given Manchester City a 2-0 lead. But Liverpool do know about comebacks, and Rafa Benitez admitted that the Istanbul experience was pulled out at half-time for motivational use once again. Fernando Torres wasn't a Liverpool player for that Champions League final, but he probably watched it. What helped Liverpool's cause was Zabaletta's sending off. And stretched, City conceded another Torres goal. But with 3 substitutes used and Martin Skrtel injured, Liverpool too were down to 10 men. Luckily, one of them was Dirk Kuyt, popping up in injury time with his first league goal in almost a year. The feast after the famine. Liverpool fans will hope they feel the same way in May.
Dirk Kuyt's long way from...
Well, here are all today's results in the Premier League. Joe Cole and Nicolas Anelka scored Chelsea's goals in that win against Villa. Newcastle United managed their first league point since August, drawing 2-2 at Everton. Portsmouth beat Stoke 2-1, thanks to a Jermaine Defoe winner. Hull are up to 3rd in the table. Giovanni scored the only goal at bottom side Tottenham, and Bolton got their first win away from home, 3-1 at West Ham. Now to that shock in Scotland in the SPL, and Rangers missed the chance to go top of the table. They only needed a draw, but a tremendous curling left-foot strike by Stephen McGinn on 77 minutes gave St Mirren the win at Love Street. That's their first home win over Rangers in 22 years. Finally, horse racing, and the favourite Zarkava has won the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe at Longchamp this afternoon. Michelle.
Ollie, thanks very much indeed. And the main news tonight, the credit crisis has deepened, with Germany appearing to offer a guarantee for all savings accounts. That's it from the Late News team. A very good night.
Hello again. It's going to be a chilly one tonight under clear skies. There's going to be a bit of patchy fog around as well. But only clearness tomorrow morning. It's not going to last. We're going to see cloudy skies prevailing, I think, and just about thick enough to give some patchy outbreaks of rain. In fact, that cloud already beginning to encroach through tonight across more western parts of the UK. Ahead of it, though, clear skies across East Wales, the Midlands, many parts of eastern England. That's where we're likely to see the fog, but also a touch of frost as well. There'll be some whiteness on the grass first thing tomorrow morning. Temperatures down to 2 or 3 degrees in the towns and cities. Does mean we get some early sunshine, but it's not going to last all that long. You can see the bright area on the map gradually disappearing as that cloud continues to edge in from the west, giving some patchy outbreaks of rain, although probably no more than nuisance value in most places, not quite getting into the Midlands by the afternoon. A little bit of brightness still across the northeast of England, but it will feel quite chilly here as the cloud moves in after that cold start. Similar story across Scotland as well, and quite a breeze picking up here through the afternoon, coming in from the south. Noticeable too across Northern Ireland, where there'll be a few little dribs and drabs of rain, but nothing very much. Not reliably dry anywhere, I don't think, across Wales and the southwest of England through the second half of the day. But again, the patchy rain mostly fairly light and reasonably mild despite the cloud and the breeze. 15 degrees in Cardiff, for example, 16 in Southampton. That rain not quite getting into London and the southeast until later on. It will arrive here, though, during Tuesday. A wet day for many of us, fairly windy too. But look at those temperatures as high as 19 or 20 degrees.